Who are followed by millions of fans across social media. Their reach has never been greater. Neither has the criticism. But from LeBron to Osaka to Kaepernick, they continue to use their platforms to fight for social change.
And be sure to tune in. The all-new CNN film Citizen Ash premieres tomorrow night at 9 Eastern right here on CNN. The next hour of CNN Newsroom starts right now.
Emotional aftershocks felt across America after the Supreme Court rules women no longer have a constitutional right to an abortion.
Been fighting my entire adult life for this day. We are dancing on the grave of Roe versus Wade.
Here we are outside of the very last standing abortion clinic in the state of Mississippi.
10 states across the country effectively banning abortion.
Protests in other cities turning violent.
Bipartisan action on the issues of guns. Congress passing that bill exactly 1 month to the day of that horrific massacre that occurred in Uvalde, Texas.
This bill doesn't do everything I want. It does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives.
The Pride Parade in Oslo canceled after a shooting near a gay bar killed at least 2 people and hurt 8 others.
I'm Pamela Brown in Washington. You are in the CNN Newsroom. For the first time since 1973, American women woke up this morning to this reality. They no longer have a constitutional right to make major decisions about their bodies, about reproduction, about abortion. After 5 justices overturned the landmark Roe versus Wade decision, protests spilled out across the country today, including right outside the Supreme Court. And a short time ago, U.S. Capitol Police announced that they arrested 2 people accused of throwing paint over the fence by the Supreme Court. States are now empowered to define abortion laws, and 26 states are expected to implement abortion bans. For opponents of abortion rights and many conservatives, it is a breathtaking victory, decades in the making, and it seemed completely out of reach just a few years ago. CNN correspondents are scattered across the country following the ripple effects of this court's historic ruling.
I'm Joe Johns at the Supreme Court. What we saw at the court today was anger, outrage, and fear about the future after the court overturned Roe versus Wade. There was a large crowd out here made up of mostly abortion rights supporters, but there were opponents of abortion here as well, leading to verbal confrontations, back and forth shouting and profanities. Police reportedly had to intervene, with speakers admonishing the crowd to remember that this was supposed to be a peaceful mass rally here outside the Supreme Court.
I'm Polo Sandoval in New York City, where a group of peaceful and passionate protesters have come together at Union Square, hoping to send a loud and clear message to women in other states, especially those in states with so-called trigger laws, hoping that they hear them loud and clear, that women here continue to be vocal and speak out after the Supreme Court ruling that has left so many people across the country frustrated. New York officials, in anticipation of that ruling, did take steps to make sure that women in New York State still had access to abortion. In fact, on Friday, New York City Eric Adams doubled down and sent a clear message to the rest of the country that New York City will continue to be a safe haven for women seeking abortions.
I'm Nadia Romero in Jackson, Mississippi, outside of the last abortion clinic still open in the state. The abortion provider tells me that he's doing abortions all throughout the day. They started letting in patients long before the opening hours, and they've remained past hours to allow those women to come in and get access to health care. You can see behind me that there are still protesters that are out here, anti-abortion protesters who've been trying to convince women not to come into the clinic. Here in the state of Mississippi, there's still about 10 days or so during that certification process before abortions must stop in this state, and that's why this clinic has extended their hours.
I'm Camila Bernal in Los Angeles, where a group of protesters has been walking around the streets of downtown Los Angeles for the entire day. They're now heading towards City Hall, where a large group is currently protesting as well. You hear the chants, you see the signs. Their message is that they stand with the women in other states where abortion is not protected. They understand that the state of California protects a woman's right to an abortion, but they want to show that they stand with the rest of the country. They have been very passionate. They have been consistent. This is the second day of protests, and they believe that they will send a message to other states. As you hear them right now, they're saying no justice, no peace, but there are many chants, and there's, of course, a lot of passion and a lot of emotion here in Los Angeles.
Certainly a lot of emotion across the country today. Camila, Nadia, Joe, and Polo, thank you so much. Well, police in Cedar Rapids, Iowa say a protester was hurt after a truck appeared to push through a crowd at an abortion rights rally last night. One person suffered minor injuries falling to the ground after making contact with the truck. Now, police said this all began with an argument as protesters were illegally crossing a downtown street. Here's another angle. You can see clearly people who placed themselves in front of the truck and others on the side banging on it. The driver was voluntarily interviewed by police. No word if any charges were filed. Tense moments in Eugene, Oregon during an abortion rights protest. Police said they responded to reports of a night of rage related to the Supreme Court decision. There was pushing, there was shoving. Police eventually used pepper spray. 10 people were arrested, and police said some officers were injured. I want to bring in Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette. Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you for coming on. Your home state of Colorado is one of the states where access to abortion is law. But as you know, Colorado is not immune to this ruling. Some of the most restrictive states may try to prosecute people who seek an abortion in states like Colorado. There's still a lot of questions out there. How concerned are you about that?
Well, as you say, Colorado is one of the 24 states that will still protect a woman's ability to make her decision to have an abortion. But already in places like Colorado, we're seeing the demand on our clinics just rise exponentially from places like Oklahoma, Texas, other states, which have already pretty much stopped doing abortions. And what that does, of course, that really extends the waiting period for everybody to be able to get the services they need. It's not like, you know, plastic surgery or something. If you need an abortion, you need it now. And so this is of great concern to all of our providers here in Colorado. They're doing everything they can to increase their ability to take these clients, and people should still try to come. They should come, but it's something that's going to take some time to resolve.
This has renewed scrutiny of abortion laws across the country. I want to ask you about Colorado's law that allows abortion at any stage of pregnancy, meaning termination after 22 weeks can still be obtained. Do you support that personally?
So of course, very few abortions happen in those later times. The important thing, and most of those are in times when there's severe fetal abnormalities. But the essential point here is it's really not for Ted Cruz or for the U.S. Supreme Court to decide that medical decision. It's for the patient and her doctor, and that's really the important issue here.
Right, and the CDC says more than 90% of abortions happen in the first trimester. But do you support the law in the books in Colorado that allows a woman to get an abortion after the baby in the womb is 22 weeks? Do you personally support that?
So Roe versus Wade says that states can make laws like that, and I support Colorado's law. I think that what I support at the national level as the co-chair of the pro-choice caucus in Congress, I support the ability of states to make their laws according to Roe versus Wade. That's what we've tried to put into law in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I believe that that should be the law of the land.
So in the decision that was made yesterday at the Supreme Court that was released, the justices said it should be up to the states. So then do you support states that now ban abortion? Because it's happening at the state level. They're making the decision in their state.
No, because I support that Roe versus Wade should be the law of the land. The Supreme Court decision yesterday says that courts can completely outlaw abortion, and that's what many states are going to start doing. Some states are going to criminalize doctors. They're going to criminalize women who are trying to make these decisions. Some states have even talked about making it a crime to leave the state to make your own decision. So I don't support that. I support the national standard that we've had for almost 50 years, and that is that Roe versus Wade should be the law of the land.
I have seen the discussion of potentially prosecuting doctors who perform an abortion in a state that has banned it. I have not seen actually prosecuting the women that seek an abortion, but of course, this is all very fluid right now. There's a lot of uncertainty, and some states are sort of figuring out what they're going to do now in the wake of this decision. Congresswoman Diana DeGette, thank you very much.
Thank you. And some states, the legislators have in fact proposed legislation that would criminalize women seeking abortion. So luckily those haven't passed, but those haven't passed, I think, right, just in the future.
But the ones that have the trigger laws do not, from my understanding. Thank you so much again, Congresswoman. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, earlier this evening, I spoke with Kristen Hawkins. She is the president of the anti-abortion group Students for Life of America, and she spoke to me about her thoughts on abortion exceptions in cases of rape or incest. You bring up two important points, your view that life begins at conception, but also your view that even bans like in Missouri, which bans abortion even in the case of rape or incest, that you support that. So under those laws, a 12-year-old could be raped and still be forced to carry that baby to term. Is that what you want? Is that the kind of thing you support?
I absolutely don't want 12-year-olds to be raped.
Right, but
and
that
I don't
happens.
want 12-year-olds
Unfortunately,
to
that's
be
a reality of the world we live in.
Absolutely. We definitely see these tragedies, and I think we need to do a better job in enforcing penalties on these people who commit heinous crimes.
But do you think the 12-year-old should carry that?
But I don't believe in discrimination against a human being based on the circumstances of their conception, because we don't issue birth certificates in our nation and give gold stars or silver stars as to how you were conceived. We say, no, you are a human being with rights and you should be protected.
So what I hear you saying
that's what we believe as a movement. And I actually think you should speak with folks like my friend Ryan Baumberger, who was actually conceived in rape, whose mother made a courageous decision to place him with an adoptive family, and talk with the tens of thousands of Americans who are living today, who have families, who were conceived in sexual assault. That every single time we talk about abortion in America, we bring these human beings up as if their lives don't matter and they don't have value. And I simply reject that.
No, and that's not what we're saying. The question was about, should a 12-year-old carry a baby to term if that 12-year-old was raped? Clearly you think yes, that is the case. And we have talked to many people who were born even though their mother was raped, or even though their mother considered having an abortion and chose not to. We've talked to people all across the spectrum. And Kristen went on to say her group's fight will now turn to the abortion pill. They claim it is deadly. The FDA, however, calls it safe and effective. And still to come, it is a unique look inside a Texas abortion clinic, the moments after the Supreme Court reversed Roe versus Wade. I'll talk to a Washington Post reporter who was there up next. Meantime, historic moment. President Biden signs into law the most consequential gun reform legislation in decades. Also ahead tonight, a deadly shooting near a gay bar in Norway now being investigated as terrorism. And a whiplash week for gun safety. Congress agreeing on the most important legislation in decades, as I just said, just as it becomes easier to carry a concealed weapon in New York. We'll be right back.
What do you see when you look at the surface? Just that, the surface. But dive deeper and new possibilities emerge. Essential intelligence from S&P Global takes you here, providing the data, risk assessment and workflow solutions you need to plumb the wonders beneath. A better, more prosperous future awaits. It's yours for the seeking. S&P Global. Seek and prosper.
Before the Second World War, much of the German watchmaking industry was centered in Saxony. One of the most important brands there was A. Lange & Söhne, known for the supreme excellence of its watches. After the war, Saxony became part of communist East Germany. Lange as a company disappeared when the communists bundled together all of the watch companies in the town. But Walter Lange, the great-grandson of the founders, escaped to the West. In 1990, after the Iron Curtain collapsed, Walter Lange returned to the town and revived the company. A huge task, but he succeeded. But what always hits me about this watch is the dial. The dial of a watch is not a big space, so when you try to arrange the elements on it asymmetrically, you are playing with design fire. But Lange succeeds brilliantly.
Out front tonight, a potential breakthrough in treating coronavirus.
We've got very little help from the federal government.
Could all this spending lead to a bigger economic crisis? One of our viewers saw you last night on the show. She says she's going to pay your rent this month. Shut up. I want to go now to an incredible story of survival. Would you do it all again in terms of being a nurse, knowing that that could put you at risk for this?
I want to help people more than I ever have.
Erin Burnett Out Front on CNN. Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge. You downplayed the US intelligence assessments. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
When the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade yesterday, it may have delivered its most life-changing decision in decades. Tens of millions of women lost their constitutional right to an abortion, and probably nowhere did it feel more like a lightning strike excuse me, than inside abortion clinics, especially those in trigger states that automatically implemented bans. Caroline Kitchener is a national political reporter for The Washington Post. Caroline, hi. So you were inside a Houston clinic when the news broke that Roe v. Wade was overturned, and in that very moment, abortions in Texas became illegal. Describe the scene for us.
It was hard to believe. It felt surreal. I was in the office when one of the staff members pulled it up on her computer screen, and everybody gathered around, and there was just silence. And there were women in the waiting room, and everybody was just quiet and looking and didn't know what to do. And then suddenly somebody said, we have to figure out what to tell these patients. We've got patients in the waiting room. We have 20 patients on the schedule today. What are we going to do?
And what did they do? I mean, how did they handle that?
I mean, they didn't really have a plan. I think because they didn't want to have a plan. They didn't want that day to come. But eventually, one of the staff members started taking the women from the waiting room one by one into consultation rooms and delivering this news. And I would see them come out just crying. You know, they didn't know where to go because it was hard to know where to send them. You know, now the staff, they had these maps out and they were looking at all of the abortion bans across America and trying to figure out, where can we send patients now? Do they have to go all the way to California?
Yeah, do you have any other sort of stories of the women who were there thinking they were going to get an abortion and then were turned away?
I spoke with one woman who was called by the abortion clinic 30 minutes before her appointment, and they told her that Roe v. Wade was overturned as she was in the car, stopped at a red light. And she said she just totally broke down. She wanted to still come into the clinic so that she could talk about her options. And you know, she got there and she, you know, was thinking through this. She thinks she probably can make it to Southern Illinois, but, you know, she's going to have to use all of her savings, she told me. And by getting to Southern Illinois and paying for that flight, she's going to be back living paycheck to paycheck. And she was distraught.
Yeah. So many lives have been changed abruptly because of the decision that came down from the Supreme Court yesterday. What's so interesting, though, is you said essentially they didn't know what to do. They didn't have a plan. They were essentially in denial because we knew that the leaked draft opinion, right, came out several weeks ago from Politico. So we knew that this could very much be a real possibility. Why do you think there was just this like sense of denial? Do you think that they had been in this so long, abortion care? I know one of them you had spoken with been in there for 30 years. They just couldn't imagine it ending like this?
Well, I think they wanted to keep going as long as physically possible. I talked to clinics in sugar ban states across, you know, much of the rest of the country that decided to stop providing early and, you know, anticipating this decision. And this clinic was just, they were determined to keep going for every moment that they still could keep going. And they did that. And I think it just, when it finally came down, you know, they did what they had to do.
What was the overall mood?
Oh gosh, it was so sad. I mean, everybody was hugging each other. People would sort of catch each other tearing up at, you know, different parts in the day and come over and bring a tissue box and, you know, put their hand on a friend's shoulder. It was bleak. I mean, you knew that clinic can't survive. It's going to close. And, you know, all of those patients are going to have to drive, you know, I think from Texas, it's an average of 600 miles to the nearest abortion clinic.
And now they're, you know, the people who work there are out of a job or soon will be. In your story, you ended with how the clinic changed its message for people calling. Tell us about that.
Yeah, the woman who runs the clinic, she took me into a consultation room with her and said, you know, Caroline, it's time for us to change our message. And the message usually says, you know, welcome, you know, this is Houston Women's Reproductive Services, leave your information, we'll call you back and schedule an appointment. And she re-recorded it to say, I'm so sorry to inform you that the Supreme Court has overturned Roe v. Wade and we can no longer offer abortions in Texas. I'm so sorry. And then she ended it with a very particular message. She said, please remember to vote.
Caroline Kitchener, thank you.
Thank you.
You're in the CNN newsroom. After that decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, Justice Clarence Thomas wrote separately that the court should revisit same-sex marriage and contraception rulings. Tomorrow on Newsroom, CNN Newsroom with Pamela Brown, I'm going to talk to Jim Obergefell. He was the lead plaintiff in the 2015 case that legalized same-sex marriage, and I was with him after that landmark decision came down and when President Obama called him.
Yes, it is, Mr. President. tell you that we were going to be hoping for some good news, and we did. I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was your wishes.
You know, your leadership on this, you know, is changing the country.
I really appreciate that, Mr. President. It's
Jim joins me tomorrow to share his concerns about possible challenges to same-sex marriage. That is right here on CNN Newsroom. Well, the Supreme Court's other big decision this week made it possible for more Americans to carry guns without permits, and it happened just as lawmakers passed the first new gun reform law in decades. So what's the state of guns in America? I'll ask the president of Everytown for Gun Safety, John Feinblatt, up next. You're in the CNN Newsroom.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
We're here now at the home of one of the FSB team, and my name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
It's just been a chaotic scene here. People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
We were just in the hospital. It was shocking. Why do you think India has been hit so badly?
Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy.
Why does a small group of women asking for their right to be educated threaten you so much?
Raise your hand if you love school.
I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you.
You can hear gunshots every couple minutes.
Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their story.
Today, shockwaves as the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade. A look at the controversial decision. When it comes to limits on abortion access, is America exceptional? Fareed Zakaria, GPS. Today on CNN.
Linda Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
Today, President Biden signed historic federal gun safety legislation into law. It is the first major gun reform to pass through Congress in decades and came together in the wake of mass shootings in Uvalde and Buffalo. It got support from both sides of the aisle and was cause for celebration on the House floor Friday after it passed. Still, the president acknowledged it falls short of what he and the Democrats had hoped.
While this bill doesn't do everything I want, it does include actions I've long called for that are going to save lives. It funds crisis intervention, including red flag laws. It keeps guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and to others. And it finally closes what is known as the boyfriend loophole. So if you assault your boyfriend or girlfriend, you can't buy a gun or own a gun.
After signing the bill, Biden said, God willing, it's going to save a lot of lives. But if you have a case of whiplash over competing news about guns, it's understandable because on Thursday, the Supreme Court voted 6-3 to strike down a century-old gun law in New York that restricted concealed carry. State lawmakers are now scrambling to respond.
I can't emphasize enough how disastrous this Supreme Court decision is. We do still have some options, but people should be worried about the future of keeping guns off of our streets.
But even in one of America's most liberal cities, some New Yorkers look forward to carrying a gun.
Absolutely, especially because I am qualified to do that and I am trained to do that, and I would feel much safer.
Joining me now is John Feinblatt. He is president of Everytown for Gun Safety. Hi, John. So your organization tweeted about the Supreme Court ruling in New York saying, quote, the court has caved to the gun lobby's extreme agenda. Tell me more about your reaction.
Well, look, I think that the Supreme Court had demonstrated a callous disregard for human life and a callous disregard for law enforcement. But I think the really big news is that Biden signed an historic bill today that broke a quarter-of-a-century logjam, and it was a bipartisan bill, and it will affect the entire nation, and it will affect every aspect of gun violence, whether we're talking about suicide or mass shootings or domestic violence or city gun violence. And the truth is, while I think that the Supreme Court is entirely out of touch in their ruling, the truth is the greatest impact is going to be that half a dozen states or so that have statutes that look like New York's that required a specific cause to carry a concealed weapon. The court made clear that 43 other states' licensing schemes would pass constitutional muster. And so the real big story today is the logjam is broken, a bipartisan bill that will affect every aspect of gun safety throughout the country.
So how do you feel? I mean, just given the gun legislation that was just signed into law, and then on the other hand, this Supreme Court decision, do you feel more hopeful, less hopeful? How do you feel?
Oh, I definitely feel hopeful. I think that already you're going to see not just that this was a stepping stone for more legislation at the federal level, but I think it is going to actually fuel legislation at the state level and the city level. And as far as the Supreme Court case goes, look, they're out of touch. They're out of touch with law enforcement who oppose more guns on their streets. They're out of touch with Black and brown communities that are already suffering from disproportionate amounts of gun violence. And they're out of touch with the safest states in the country that have the toughest laws. There's no question about it. Laws matter. Laws keep you safe. So they're out of touch. But in the meantime, we've got a bipartisan bill that breaks a logjam of a quarter of a century that's going to affect the entire nation and every aspect of gun safety and gun violence.
Let's look at what is in this law. $750 million for crisis intervention programs. The boyfriend loophole closed, enhanced background checks for younger gun buyers, funding for mental health programs, school security, and it creates new federal statutes against gun trafficking. What is missing that you would like to see?
Look, it also provides funding for red flag laws, which, sadly, in the case of Buffalo, it was a textbook case for a red flag law, which allows police in New York or school officials in New York or family members to petition a court for a temporary removal of guns. It's a great tool, but you have to pick it out of the toolbox. And in New York, it wasn't taken out of the toolbox in the Buffalo case. And so what we know is laws are good, but you have to use for them to be effective.
Right. The law enforcement in New York chose not to after investigating it. So that is the question. Will states other states who adopt the red flag laws, will they actually use them? John Feinblatt, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamela.
Well, Norway is now under the country's highest terror alert after a mass shooting outside an Oslo gay bar. The people were killed, 8 others were taken to the hospitals. A suspect is now in custody. More details here from CNN's Michael Holmes.
Police in Norway are calling a deadly shooting outside a gay nightclub in Oslo a terrorist attack. A gunman opened fire overnight Friday, killing 2 people and injuring 22 others, 3 of them critically.
There were many who cried, who screamed. Injured people screamed, people were upset, and people were lying on the floor inside because they were very scared.
Police arrested the suspect within minutes and charged him with murder, attempted murder, and terrorist acts.
He's a Norwegian citizen, originally from Iran. He's known to the police, but not for big things. Some convictions for smaller things compared to what we face today.
The acting chief of Norway's police security service said they'd been aware of the man since 2015, when they became concerned he was becoming radicalized and was part of an extreme Islamist network. The country's terror threat level has been raised from moderate to an extraordinary threat situation, and police who normally are not armed in Norway have taken up weapons temporarily in the aftermath of the attack, which also forced organisers to cancel the city's gay pride parade.
We are shaken and have been advised by police to cancel today's events. We take the police's advice and recommendations seriously and are encouraging people not to gather in central Oslo.
Meanwhile, Norway's Prime Minister is expressing his solidarity with the queer community and speaking directly to Muslims in the wake of the attack.
I know that many Muslims in our country are also scared and in despair. It is our common responsibility to make it clear that no one other than the person or the people behind the attack is responsible for it. Let there be no doubt. We are a community, we are a diverse and strong community, and we will never be threatened or give up our values.
Michael Holmes, CNN, Atlanta.
President Biden is in Europe tonight trying to keep the world's economic powers allied against Russia's war on Ukraine. Our MJ Lee joins me from Austria up next here in the CNN Newsroom. And this weekend on CNN, you may know Arthur Ashe as a legendary tennis champion, the first black man to win the singles title at Wimbledon, the U.S. Open, and the Australian Open. But his legacy goes far beyond the court. The new CNN film, Citizen Ashe, premieres tomorrow night at 9.
Everything is concentrated on the razor's edge. And you forget the score, you forget where you are. I feel that my body's floating within myself.
Arthur Ashe, bright young member of the United States Davis Cup team.
Some people think we are all brawn and no brains, and I like to fight the myth.
He started becoming a citizen of the world.
Arthur Ashe, the first black player to win the men's Wimbledon singles title.
He had evolved from someone who was analytical to someone who became more about direct action.
AIDS became another fight for Arthur, and he picked it up like he did every other cause.
He never forgot about his race, and when I say his race, I'm talking about the human race.
Citizen Ashe premieres tomorrow at 9 on CNN.
5 years ago, and we decided that we wanted to have a
Freshman Academy Community Service Project, and we decided part of that was going to be working with spreading awareness of modern-day slavery.
At the end of your presentation, you need to tell me how that issue connects to your poem.
There's probably 300, 400 kids in the Freshman Academy. We had all of their core teachers make sure on My Freedom Day that they were teaching about that topic. And now we've got not just our core classes doing it, but also our elective classes.
Okay guys, so this is what we're going to do today as far as packing. You are going to grab a Ziploc bag, and then you are going to start here.
So when we first started this was exclusively for the freshman class, but it was such a hit with all of the classes that every year we've grown and added the classes in, so now it's a school-wide event.
And who are you helping?
So we have two groups, and both of those organizations work towards ending human trafficking or helping those that are in need. It's been amazing because our students have really embraced the idea of learning about modern slavery and embraced the idea of what is human trafficking, how it has impacted them, and it's been a very popular topic to learn about and to participate in.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster. More breaking news that we are following right now. You really work as hard as you can getting the facts. We're learning more about an alleged plot. It is critically important. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
In a leafy corner of Bawal National Park, a high-stakes courtship is taking place. The future of this critically endangered species in Bangladesh depends on it. The Asian giant tortoise was thought to be extinct in the country until 10 years ago, when a few were discovered in the wild. And now, conservation biologist Shawar Cesar Rahman is on a mission to bring them back.
We realize if we want to prevent extinction of the species from Bangladesh, we must take drastic efforts.
Rahman runs a conservation and breeding center for 4 critically endangered species of turtle and tortoise.
The captive bred critically endangered Asian giant tortoises, which are bred here in our center for the first time in Bangladesh. We'll be releasing these individuals back in the wild.
Working with the indigenous Mro community, he and his team train former hunters as parabiologists, or citizen scientists that collect data and monitor species to help protect local wildlife.
We're empowering them to be the guardian of the ecosystem. I do believe there are reasons to be optimistic, and it all depends on us and the future generation to make that decision and to take action.
President Biden is in Germany right now. He is there for a summit focusing on Russia's brutal, grinding war in Ukraine and also the global economy. And his trip comes while back home, the nation is struggling with the Supreme Court rulings on abortion and guns. CNN's MJ Lee joins me now. MJ, these enormous domestic issues have taken Ukraine off the radar here in the States. What are the president's goals of the summit regarding the war?
Well, Pam, we saw President Biden land in Munich just over 3 hours ago. He is, of course, here in Europe to participate in two major global conferences, beginning with that G7 summit in Germany. And you're absolutely right that Ukraine is obviously going to be a huge, huge factor as he meets with these global leaders. And one of the main things that he is going to try to do is keep the U.S. and its allies united and keep up that united front against Russian aggression. Now, one thing that is telling, we have been told that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he is going to be giving a virtual address. That means that these global leaders really want to shine the spotlight on the Ukrainian president as he continues to fight against Russian aggression. And then the other factor that you mentioned as well, these leaders are going to be talking a whole lot about the economic ramifications of the Ukraine war. Obviously, President Biden back at home is dealing with a number of economic challenges, the biggest one being inflation. We are seeing high gas prices, high food prices. All of these things have been exacerbated by everything that is going on in Ukraine. And this is something that has been a very difficult thing for the U.S. administration, the Biden administration, to get a handle on. So it just goes to show, yes, he is going to be doing this big swing through Europe, and he is going to be, of course, very much focused on foreign policy, but all of these issues, particularly the economic issues that are so important back at home, those are very, very closely tied to the foreign policy issues that he is going to be spending a ton of time on in the coming days, Pam.
All right, MJ Lee in Austria for us. Thank you so much, MJ. Well, the January 6th committee has tied Donald Trump to the fake electors plot, and the Department of Justice has subpoenaed more people about this scheme. We're going to break it all down for you up next.
I think that there's an understanding that wellness and fitness and well-being is important in a COVID world. And that is certainly what we're seeing. Not only are we seeing a significant demand for membership across our estate, but we're also seeing an increase in usage, existing members using the clubs more. And that on top of hybrid working, you know, we've got lots of data that tell us that members are going to not go into the office as much. We're a suburban-based business. We're seeing people come and use the clubs differently. And that is all positive for us. So on the negative side, we've got an increase in the cost base, but on the positive side, we've got a greater demand for what we're offering. I think someone has to be absolutely committed to improving their mental and physical well-being, but we will hold their hand every step of the way.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. Weekdays on CNN.
This is a really important story. My name's Clarissa Ward. I work for CNN.
Assalamu alaikum.
Day in, day out, you see the reality of people living through this. Ничего страшного. Okay.
This is the front line.
On a human level, you find courage, sacrifice. This is what life is about.
A lot of people are wondering why.
You see the worst of humanity.
Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Absolutely terrifying.
But you also see the best of humanity. My job is to be present.
The human cost is right here.
And to tell these stories.
We're talking about families.
That is the most important thing. I'm Clarissa Ward in Ukraine. This is CNN.
This is CNN.
Well, more than a dozen states are ready to ban abortion if and when the Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade. In some of those states, it has already happened. CNN's Tom Foreman breaks down which states have already enacted their bans.
13 states had so-called trigger laws in place for this day, meaning abortion bans that would go into effect very quickly, according to the abortion rights group, the Guttmacher Institute. In Kentucky and Louisiana and South Dakota, for example, the laws said it would happen immediately. So barring some issue, it's already illegal there. The next level were the states where abortion bans are to be enforced 30 days from now. In Idaho, Tennessee, and Texas, although there's a push in Texas to bypass that delay and have it in place even sooner. We should note all these maps are in flux because this is moving so quickly this weekend. Then we have a half dozen states where officials need to certify their legislation is legally valid before their bans kick in. Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Utah, and Wyoming. And again, they're moving so fast to get this done, they may all be done by the time you hear this. And we know that those that aren't, it could still just be a matter of hours or days until they are done. So then we have all of these with trigger laws in place. And then we add to that states that have old unenforced abortion bans, which now can be enforced, and states that passed bans under Roe, which were blocked by the courts, which now would be unblocked. Altogether, you get a whopping 26 states certain or likely to ban abortion. We say likely because there are places such as Montana where a state Supreme Court ruling is, for now, still in the way. We talk about a lot of laws in this country that may or may not be felt by people everywhere. These laws are really going to reverberate all across the country through the actions of these states.
These troops, they are Russian. I've spoken to the commander. He said they are now in control. Over that way. It's a secret location. They're going to fire on Russian forces. There has been a ferocious battle here. There's unexploded grenades everywhere. We're being shown the powerful American guns, giving them an edge.
You downplayed the US intelligence assessment. Do you now regret that?
I'm in Kiev right now, and it is under attack, Mr. Lavrov, from Russian forces.
I'm being told by our security that we need to get our flak jackets on.
No matter where you are in this country, lives are being shattered.
There are thousands streaming out. It is at least a chance to save their own lives. Matthew Chance, CNN.
Today on CNN. In a year full of challenges, let's salute those using their platforms for good.
It's just so needed, and we have a lot more to do.
Join us as we shine a light on some familiar faces.
I have gotten a front row seat to what heroism is.
Turning words into action.
It makes us human.
If we still care, there is hope.
CNN Heroes Salutes, hosted by Aaron Burnett. Today.
I'm Anna Stewart in the City of London, and this is CNN.